Hello and welcome to another episode of the Low Code Campfire. It's Friday, November 22nd, and I'm Patrick Anderson, and briefly standing in for Dale, who should be joining us in just a bit. Um, so the Low Code Campfire is our Plantain Apps community gathering of people who use Plantain App and people who are interested in using Plantain App to get together and share techniques and talk about things that you've accomplished and problems you might be having. We encourage sharing from everyone at any skill level. All these meetings are recorded, and all the valuable information that we get when we're attending these meetings can be, you can go back and look at it again for future reference just by going to our YouTube channel. We usually get these posted the same day or the next day. Um, and you can subscribe by just going to youtube.com/plantainapp or scanning the QR code you see on the screen right now. Our agenda is always simple. We'll go around to the campfire and introduce ourselves, and then we'll do a first call, and then sometimes the first call takes us all the way to the end. But if not, we'll look at any contributions to the campfire website and the community site and feature requests. We encourage you to please jump in at any point, ask a question if you don't understand something, or give clarification on something that we might be struggling with. You can submit questions and topics ahead of time by scanning the QR code you see here. And with that, we move into the introductions. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
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 Good morning.
I was slightly delayed at the beginning because I was having, evidently Zoom has changed some of the interface, and I was having trouble figuring out how to turn off the waiting room. But I think everybody got in okay, so that's good. All right, so first call it is. Who's got something to bring to us? I know someone does. And just to confirm, you guys are there, right?
Crickets.
Yes, we are.
Crickets.
I,
Crickets.
I wait for my first call until halfway through. That's when I remember.
Well, we can move along to some other stuff. I had um, a hotfix that I know is coming out soon that I thought I'd share with you guys. Maybe that will inspire somebody to come and with some other ideas. So let me see if I can find that. So I don't know if anybody was aware of this, but so this is a form that has a dynamic fields, and there's two of them. One is TX2 and one is TX1. Let me just refresh this, actually. Yeah, okay, good. So if I click show, you can see TX1, and if I click hide, you can see TX2. So if I show TX1 and click submit, I'm getting the values for both the TX1 and TX2. And if I hide it and click submit, you can see I'm still getting those values. And this is something we discovered, that even if you have let me just, for those who are not familiar with it, let me make sure I show this as I'm talking about it. Even if you have the setting, when you're using dynamic fields, even if you have the submit hidden fields option turned off, if a dynamic field is hidden, it still submits. And I don't know if anybody else has come across this, but it was discovered, and we made a change to handle it. So let me show you my implementation here so you're aware of how this is working. First of all, I have a dynamic field container I think most people are probably familiar with using the dynamic field container, but just want to make sure that you see that there. And then on the initialization of the form, I'm adding a dropdown. That's the dropdown I was showing you that has the two values for show and hide. And then I'm adding a text box, and the initial value of both of them is init val. So this is very simple. I mean, you can do very complex things with dynamic fields. That's why they're so useful. But this setup to demonstrate this is very simple. And then I have a bind expression that I show this field if the dropdown is true. And then I show the second field. No, it doesn't have it, so it's always there. So the first one is the one that's only showing if the dropdown is true, and the second one is always there. So as you could see when I did my demo just a second ago, that this was being automatically put into the and I am just on my submit, I'm taking the JSON of the dynamic fields. So that's another feature I want to make sure I point out, is that you can get a complete JSON report of all the fields in your dynamic field container by using the field ID :JSON, and that will give you a JSON of all the values that were submitted. And you could see it was the same whether or not that field was hidden. So what we've done, bring up another site here where I've actually installed this Hotfix. And I should have had this ready to roll, but I forgot. Where did I put it? Well, even if I can't find it, I will just, oh, this is it here. Perfect. Okay, so now if I click show and submit, you can see that I'm getting the values as expected. And if I click hide and then submit, well, let me go see if I'll show you what we did, and hopefully it'll fix it. Okay, so I have submit hidden fields is unselected. Let me save this like that. Okay, and then reload the page and submit. Okay, now you can see that first the value of the field, the first one, is not being submitted now, and that is the change that we did. Is we for a dynamic field container, that submit hidden fields option that's under settings will not apply, but in the dynamic field container, you now have an option to choose whether or not you're submitting hidden fields. So if I make that true and save and then reload and hit submit, you can see that I get both the TX1 and TX2 fields. So I'd put that out there as a icebreaker. Anybody have any thoughts? Somebody's raising their hand. Ben, go ahead.
I just want to clarify that this is a dynamic field issue only. The regular fields still follow the correct.
That's correct. Yep.
Behavior.
Yeah. So the dynamic fields were just not didn't look at that behavior, and what we decided to do actually was make the setting apply specifically to create a new setting that applies specifically to dynamic fields, and so that's why you make the setting here in the container.
I can ask, I'm just curious, why a separate setting?
I think there was a technical limitation. I am not. I didn't. I wasn't involved in the finding of the issue or the decision on the solution, but I believe there may have been a technical limitation.
Then, if I can make one suggestion, if it is not possible to have the dynamic fields to look at the true setting on the form for the submitting of hidden fields, and you have to do a separate one, then my suggestion is on the settings tab, where you have that checkbox, put in parentheses, this does not apply to dynamic fields.
Sure.
Because otherwise people are not going to understand why there's two or get confused or whatnot. So at least it's very apparent that it's only for direct fields on the form and not dynamically created ones.
Yeah, it's a good idea to guide people in the correct direction. Agreed. Any other thoughts? So just so you know, on upgrade, when this hotfix is installed, this option is going to come through as true because that's the behavior that existed before this hotfix. So if you wanted that to not be the case on an existing implementation of dynamic fields, you would simply come in here and deselect that checkbox and resave. So we always try to when we make a change like this, we try to have the default mimic the existing behavior before the change. So that's what we're doing here.
I think Matt has a question.
Yes, Matt, go ahead.
So this is not directly related to dynamic fields per se, but
it is.
It reminded me of
your question. I'm sorry. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yes, my question. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I have essentially a couple of drop downs on the form, and they're connected together, and there's some data loaded into the form already, so that if the results of the drop down match the data that's loaded in the form already, then I want to enable certain buttons. If it doesn't match, then I don't want to enable those buttons. If my reading of it is correct, the drop downs are SQL lookups. When you do that, the binding expressions are not operative. Is that correct, or am I missing something?
I'm gonna need to unpack that a little bit. So so you have information coming into the form through the initialization events, correct? So you're loading values through initialization into a dropdown, and then go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. Continue.
Loading value in the dropdown. You're loading preloading value a value into a dropdown, and that the source on that is SQL. Is the source always the same? Is that maybe I'm not understanding that completely?
Okay, the source on the initial, basically it's comparison of two sides, if you would, of the form. So side one gets preloaded, and that's just a read of the data file. And then the second drop down is, it does there's actually two drop downs that do lookups. And if the first lookup matches the value, the corresponding value that's been preloaded, then I want to display some other basically checkbox fields. If it does not match, then I don't want to display them. Now, if you scroll down, you'll see, in the drop-down documentation.
Mm-hmm.
If you go down, no, I'm sorry, maybe it's in the validation documentation. Oh, the binding expressions. Anyway, I've got to load the page, but you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so there you go. The second line in, only client-side tokens are supported. Example of blah, 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 field tokens. You may not use server-side tokens. So my understanding of that is including tokens generated on submit or a drop-down field. Am I reading that correctly?
So yeah, basically this is saying that when the form initializes, after form initialization, let's put it that way. After the form has initialized, the tokens that will work in these bind expressions are only client-side tokens. They're the ones that you have in your form. So if a drop-down value changes, then the bind will change if you're using that drop-down field token here. So if I have another drop-down here and I want to show this when that drop-down is a specific value, I can put that drop-down ID token here and say equals that specific value. And it will respond to that dropdown. But if I can't use my token here and expect that to change on after the form is initialized.
Okay, so that said, thank you. That's exactly what I'm attempting to do. So it's essentially matching, in this case, on a customer ID. So I preload one customer ID, and then I have another drop down, which gives me the target customer ID. And that has not been working for me. So I'm not sure.
So you're preloading a value into a drop down, and you want to see if that matches the value in another drop down, right? But what I want to make sure that you're doing is using those drop down field tokens in this expression.
That is what I'm attempting to do, yes. Use the drop down, when you do the copy field ID, for example, that's what I'm using.
Yeah.
So, all right, so let me keep looking. Maybe there's something else I'm missing here.
Can I ask something?
Sure.
Unless I wasn't following correctly. I understood it as differently. You're not looking to validate data against another dropdown. You're looking to validate the value of a dropdown against a value in your database.
Yes. Okay, so let me back up.
That's what it sounded like what you were trying to do.
Yeah, it's probably not quite either. All right, so essentially what I'm loading we'll call it a source customer ID, okay? And that's just using a read on the events. And that's stored as a field value inside the form. So it's in context. Then what I'm attempting to do is using a lookup, a drop-down SQL lookup, give the user the opportunity to choose either that same customer or a different customer. And if it's the same customer, then I want some other fields to appear, checkboxes to appear. Is that reasonably clear?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. Yeah.
So far what you're saying, that can be done directly through bind expressions.
Yeah.
Okay.
So far.
Yeah, that is it so far, Ben. I'm just
just in the bind expression, you would just say whatever the drop down is that you're testing, and the value that it's supposed to match against.
Yep.
So if you have two drop downs, let's say for argument's sake, you want drop down 2 to only show up if drop down 1 matches the text box with the customer ID.
Yep.
So in drop down 2 bind expressions, you would say for the bind show where drop down 1 equals text box.
Yep.
Or so not equals text box, sorry. Because then you would get the second drop down, which has the other customers, let's say.
Right.
If it's the same customer, you don't want to show it, let's say. So
okay, I think I just started on this and I saw that and I'm like, am I misunderstanding something here? So I've got to go back and do some more experimentation. So I'm probably...
Yeah, ultimately this is a scoping kind of question. At least that's how I refer to it as a scoping question,
Mhm.
where when you're using bind, you always have to remember that bind means that it's going to avoid doing a postback. A postback is the only way you're going to be able to get new information from the server. So if you're using bind, that means you don't want to do a postback. So the only data that you're going to have at your disposal is whatever data has already been transmitted to the client on their web page. So if it's visible on the web page or in a hidden field, you have access to it. If it's something that has not been sent to the page and it's sitting in your database that you want to look up, bind will not be able to reach that. You have to do a postback in order to do that. Now, the only caveat to that is if you do a bind JavaScript with an API call,
Right.
you could then use that to get data out of the database, return it, and do something with it at the client level. But then you're talking that's JavaScript. That's not low code.
Right. That's
it's more under the hood.
Yeah, it's a different animal. Yep. Okay. So just to restate what you said to make sure that I'm getting it. If I have a drop down, the results of which I want to use as a bind expression, part of a bind expression for another field to display or not to display, that's perfectly valid. So if I go look up a customer, let's say, and I want these fields to display only if it's customer ID 25, and that the drop-down result is customer 25, then that other field will show based on the bind conditions.
Don't see a problem with that.
Okay. All right. Then I must have misunderstood the directions. Thank you.
Well, clearly I was I put the bind expression on the wrong field, but you can see that this is basically kind of what you're looking for, right? If these values don't match, then I don't see that field. If the values do match, then I do see the field.
Got it.
That's what you're looking for, right? Yeah. So that's it. But I thought I put that bind expression on the checkbox, but I guess I didn't.
Maybe not.
Evidently, I copied somehow. I copied dropdown 2 and I put the bind expression there. So anyway, but it's doing exactly what you're looking for. Yeah. So that should be there. By all means, that should be working. But and what Ben was talking about, doing an API, and that's I use that method a lot. So that's another way you can do things. But what you described, I think, is what I've sort of recreated here. Correct?
Yeah, it certainly looks it. Alrighty. I wasn't sure when I read the documentation. I'm like, oh, rats.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean,
no.
Yeah. It's a like. So the value for dropdown 1 is technically, it's the source of it is not client side because I'm using the get token, but I'm establishing that at initialization. But now I can't I can't make that something different. It's the value that was established at initialization for dropdown 1, and now I'm using the form token that was filled in by establishing that at initialization.
Right, and that would actually be precisely what I'm doing. I have the initial value in one field, and then the other result of a drop down in another, and then that comparison. Thank you very much.
So now both of those fields are hidden, and if I choose that, then they both show up.
Cool, great, thank you.
Sure. Jim.
Yeah, so my question isn't about Matt's question; it's about the question.
The previous one.
Yeah.
Sure. The rollback.
The rollback. So I've always done dynamic things the way Matt and Ben were describing. What is the use case for doing the dynamic fields? I mean, is it letting you read a record and then post? Only show those fields based on a looping through the.
Right. Yeah. So you can. It's a way for the forum to be dynamic. Like fields can you can load fields based on a context, basically. And my favorite example that I know I've shown you guys probably way too many times, but it's just that it's one that I've implemented and feel pretty good about, and that's the exam on our Academy site. It's all dynamic fields, and it basically it keeps on. It shows you three exam questions at a time, and each time you click next, it's getting a new set of questions into the same form. And that's that's an example of when you would want to use something like that. Does anybody else want to give other use cases they have done with dynamic fields?
But in that use case that you're giving, what would be different? What's the difference between, okay, I clicked next and I read 3 records and just populated 3 fields? Where's the dynamic part come in, I guess is where.
So we can take a look at that if you want.
While he pulls that up, maybe I can answer it. So basically, let's say, for example, you have a form with a dynamic, or let's say you have a form where you're filling out questions. And if it's, let's say, for a student, and there's some information that you're collecting for the student, depending on how you answer the question, you may have to collect more information than you would if you didn't answer a certain way. So the fields that appear could be different for a number of different scenarios. Instead of putting static fields on the form for every kind of scenario, and then showing and hiding those fields, and then having to deal with, oh, well, if it's this scenario, I got to make sure I look at this field name and that field name and this one. What you can do is build a dynamic list of fields that, based off of whatever information, it will build out exactly the fields you need. And that's it. You don't have to worry about other fields that are hidden or having to, show other fields or whatever. The control itself will put in exactly the fields that you need for that particular use case. Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. So, and then in Patrick's example there, so what you're saying is the dynamic portions are the options. So you have, where you could have read
the field, the whole field.
Yeah, the whole field. Yeah, it's all. I'll show you the implementation in just a second. But if I click next 3 questions, it's loaded 3 completely new radio box fields into the form.
Okay.
Yep. And next 3 questions, same thing. If I go previous 3 questions, it's bringing back to the previous 3. So each time I click one of these buttons, it's completely reloading it. And then I'm going actually back to what we were. Yeah,
can I give an example based off of what you're showing right now?
Yeah, sure.
Maybe this might drive the idea home. So this particular page with the first 3 questions, it's 3 radio options, multiple choice. Let's say the next page, it's a multiple choice, but then it's a free form fill-in and another multiple choice.
Yeah. Yep.
With dynamic, you can do that because the next page that builds, it'll build one with multiple options, another one, the second field will be a text box, and the third field will be multiple options again. You don't have to worry about hiding a multiple and then showing a text box. If you did this statically for every question, you would have to have every possible combination. So if question 1 can be multiple choice, it can be a dropdown, it can be a text box, you need to have 3 fields for question 1 and then show and hide the appropriate fields as you need. Whereas in a dynamic situation, you just add the field that you need at that moment.
Okay. That makes sense. No, because I was trying to tie it to cases where I'm looking at a piece of, I have the same record coming back every time, and I'm just hiding or unhiding for customer A, I need an extra attribute. But it's always a checkbox, or it's always a drop down or something that I just hide or unhide. So okay. Where here you're actually changing the content of what you're showing them based on what you're retrieving.
Yeah. And I was going to point out that based on what we were talking earlier about running on change like an API call on an on change in the in your field. That's what's so if each time I click one of these answers, it's running an API and saving this this user's answer to the database, so that if I look at the next 3 questions and I just randomly answered these here and go back, you can see the same answers that I put in before are still there. If I go to the next 3 questions, those answers are still there. But this is completely reinitializing the form each time I do that. And just to give you an idea what that looks like, here's my dynamic field container. So this is where the questions are going, and then the actual fields themselves are coming from this execute actions here. Here's where I get the list of questions, and I have them split into question groups. So that's how we determine what the 3 questions that are going to be displayed is it's getting getting the question group from the URL. And then based on that response, then we are adding a radio box field here. And
so in here, if the question you pulled back was free form text, you'd have some condition on this add and add a text box. Am I getting that right?
Oh yeah, actually, yeah. So in our we didn't end up using different stuff, different field types, but we have it designed so that we can use field types. I believe that I guess I don't see the example here, but I think we designed the data source so that we can say what type of question it is, and we ended up with all radio boxes. But in our data source, if we had text box type in our data source, or something that specified this field, when you load it, you wouldn't need to use this this type. Then in my execute actions for each list entry, I would put in a condition right here that says type equals radio boxes. And if I collapse this and then added a checkbox, I would put in a condition here. It says type equals checkbox. And that way I know I'm getting the right kind of field for the data that I'm loading.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. Anybody else have any other usage examples of dynamic forms or other thoughts or questions? Real quick, I'm going to refresh this before I accidentally save something.
Well, I'll just mention that it doesn't have to be used for fields that are asking for information. It could also be for using an image or an iframe, or anything interesting. It's a very nice way to make your page dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I don't know if you guys remember or not. The one of Dale's earlier Low Code cafes using AI. He did a dynamic interview and used AI to generate the interview questions, and he used dynamic fields for that purpose. That was a pretty cool example. So the questions were being generated on the fly by AI and then being presented to the user based on their previous answers. And if you don't remember that or haven't seen it, go look it up on YouTube, because it's a pretty good example of I mean, that's pretty much the ultimate in dynamic, right? That the questions are actually being generated as the user is answering. The questions that they're going to get next are being generated right then by AI. Cool. Any other thoughts on this, or another question that somebody wants to bring up? Mark, you unmuted yourself.
You don't
I'm
miss a
calling you
trick. Yeah, Patrick. I saw in one of the hot fixes for 1.26 that it was demonstrating a long list of tokens that could be used inside listings. And they looked a little bit unusual to me in the respect that
Oh,
a lot of
yes.
them started with $signs
Mhm.
and there were not square brackets. So I was just curious, how does one use these special tokens that work in listings?
Look at this.
Look at that.
That's Dale. He knew it was coming. So, yes. So those can be used in square brackets. And I meant to set up a a, a, a setup of that before the call, but I didn't get to it. But maybe we can do it on the fly. I also see somebody named Plantinap join the call. That might be Dale himself. Let's see here. Trying to think of an example. Maybe I can use something I already have on my site here, and we can go with that. So let's first bring up that page. Up a new tab here and go to Planting App documentation. Listing tokens. So this is the page that Mark is referring to. So we have the documentation here on a lot of these existed already. There are some new ones that we added, but a lot of these were in place already. I see Dale is there, but he's still in his car, so that's fine. Let's I'm going to use this one right here. So total results. Look at that and go back over to here, and I'll go see if I have. Okay, good. I have here. So let's go and go into that listing here. Go into a button. Just going to add a button here, and put that token there, and we'll let that stay that way. And then we're
It
going to
would
leave
seem to be significant that you're putting that on a button instead of in a row in the listing.
So it's not. I mean, you can use these other places too. The one thing that I will say, okay, so let's just take a look at that. This is determined during our QA process, and we decided that we would look at it in the future. But if I go into a specific field and I look at this show in footer and choose text option here, I believe, and actually, Dale, if you are able to say something, that's great. But I think this is the spot where we determined that those tokens cannot be used in this context right here. But at some point in the future, we would like them to be used in this context. So and the choice that I made, the token that I chose. I chose that specifically because it was a request from somebody that we had an easier way to get this, and so we have that now. An easy, because in your let me go ahead and save this like that and make sure I get exactly what I'm looking for here. My token. Let me go back in there and look. Did I not do something correct? There it is. Take that off. It should not be impacting it. Oh, I didn't want to make it an item, but that's what I did wrong here. It probably was there, but we delete that. Here. Okay, so you can see now that I have that here, I could put that down here, and I could actually put the text there, total results. And this was a request that we had from somebody, because I don't know if you guys recall that previously, in order for you to show a total, there was always some sort of finagling you had to do. You could add a column that had ones in it and then do a sum of that column. If I had paging, I do get to see my total results in the paging, but they wanted to not use paging. In their case, they just wanted to have a total. So that's what we have here. And you can see that the usage is exactly what you're saying. You just take that value and you put it in brackets.
Okay, very good.
Yeah. Any other questions or thoughts about that?
Not
I
being
have
familiar
one.
with those. Oh, go ahead, whoever that was.
It's Dale. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yes. Hi.
Okay. Hi. Um, so at some point I was involved in needing to see what was available in these tokens and within the grid space. And so now that we have the new get generate object or generate array from context, the action revealed all the different things that were in context. And so I put them out there on this help page, everything that I found that was there, and tried to make sense of what was there and what kind of values. I didn't specify putting brackets around them, so that that was probably good that you called me out on that. But that was really this isn't so much as grid we have this plan, and so we wanted to document everything we're going to do. It was kind of in the after the fact. We have grid. It's been around for a long time. There's been a lot of features added over time, so I documented what was there. That was the point.
Right. Yeah, and that ties back to what I said earlier, is that a lot of those tokens were already in existence, but we added some, and total results was one of them that we added.
Well, I appreciate that you put all that list together so that we could see what's in there. I for one, I wasn't really aware of all those tokens and all the goodness that they have.
So here's what Dale was referring to. If I yeah, I don't know if you all watched the setup that I just did, but if I click context, now you can see that this is how you can actually see everything that Dale discovered, is doing that setup that I just did, and then you can take all this text here and put it into something that will make the JSON look nicer for you, and you can actually see the existing values for all those. And I'll just do that for fun. Let's see. Go here. I know I could open up my notepad, but so yeah, here they are. And you'll see some that that you recognize probably pretty quickly. But this is, and I know that we've been showing this a lot, but I think it does. I don't think we can reiterate this enough, how useful it is to be able to just go in and see everything that's in your context. And just to be very clear, I want to go back for just a second and look at my implementation here, just in case anybody missed it, because I was kind of doing it while Dale was talking. On this button, I maximized what I was going to see in that list. We have some default values that load into the exclude prefixes option here. And so all those tokens that start with $, I wouldn't have seen those in my display error message action if I hadn't removed those from this exclude prefixes. And we did that because really, ultimately, what's most useful to you is to see the context that you're building in your processes. So this just automatically gets rid of some of the noise for you. But if you do want to see everything, then you can remove the values that are put by default into exclude prefixes, and that way you get to see everything. And so that is what resulted in this list of, let's see, nearly 100 items, 99. So displaying 100 of 102, so it's 102 in total.
Okay, well, thank you for showing that.
Yep. Anybody have any other thoughts about the listing tokens?
That was a new action that you just created?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, new in towards the end of 1.25, so it was a later hotfix in 1.25, and it's been in 1.26 the entire time.
So if you have 1.25, if you get the latest hotfixes, you'll have that?
You should, yep, you should have that.
I'm curious to see how that works in automation.
We also made changes. Sorry, we also made changes through the set token value, the create update token action has the ability to do the checkbox to say that you want to evaluate tokens for the name, so you can dynamically create names. And so together, those two things kind of open up possibilities, being able to read your context and create other context from it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you took the context that you get from here and then parsed it, and you could establish a dynamic token value here, token name, I should say, token name with a value, and that's
what's the name of that action? Because I keep missing it when you scroll up.
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a context to JSON array, and there's context to JSON object. There's two. So you have one for an array and one for an object.
Awesome. And
the context JSON object has a extra setting. Let me just pull that in here. Context to JSON object. So you can choose to nest the objects so that subtokens will be shown underneath their parent property. So that's in the JSON object.
I'm sorry, I'm embarrassed to ask, but I don't understand what you mean by context in this case. In this context.
It's so at the time that this action runs, I'm going to show you the tokens and the available tokens and their values. That's the current context at the very time that this action runs. So you could actually put this action in your action stack more than once, and take a look. It's an excellent troubleshooting tool, and in fact, Dale, haven't you shown that on this call? Yeah, we did. Yeah, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, Dale, I think, showed you an implementation of just that. But in any case, it's an excellent troubleshooting tool because you can take these actions and put them in your stack multiple times so that you can see the progression of a token value through your stack. And instead of outputting it to a display error message like I am, you could output it to a log entry or to a file. Something along those lines. So there's various other ways you can output the, so you just establish the store result here, and then you can parse it to get specific values. And also this include prefixes can be very useful because you can make up your own prefixes that you want that establish your own prefixes within your context, and then just include that prefix so you get exactly what you want in the output of the action.
And on the question
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dale.
On the question of the fact that we call it context, I always think of these as variables, right? From a programmer standpoint. So this is a way to dump all your variables, but we call it context.
Okay. I think I'm going to have to look that up, your example, and watch it again. Yeah, I'm familiar with the concept of the fact that a token's value is going to change or can change over time. And that's going to be important to your workflow. So I think it corresponds to what you're doing.
And the result of your token can be based on other tokens that you're not seeing anywhere else. Like you don't, they're token values that you don't save, but your logic is based on the value. So if you put one of these actions into your stack and output that data, then you get that context. You can see, okay, what was the my logic needed this value. What was the value I actually got? So then you see, oh, this is where it went wrong. You follow that that thinking?
Yes, that makes total sense. I gotcha.
Yeah.
So another use case that I was anticipating with this is if you, I mean, debugging is one thing, but another thing is like transporting this information or saving it for a later time. If you use the context to array action and get all of your current context, you could store that away in a file. And then when you come back at a later time, you could retrieve that information from the file and loop through these name value pairs and restore your context. So it's an interesting thought about being able to come back to the exact same place that you were.
Well, that's actually very interesting.
So just real quick, just showing you. I mostly for the benefit of anybody who might be watching this who doesn't know that these things exist. I'm just doing what Dale just said. So I'm taking the context of JSON array. It's being stored into a result called context tokens, and then I'm using our save file action, and the content source is going to be text, and I'm using that token, the output token, is just putting that in there. So this is how you could see. And also something else you could do is in the file name. I know that when the file is saved, you'll be able to see the create date and time, but you could also put in here the date time token with a formatted value that is file name friendly, and that way you can make sure there's an easy way to order. If you have multiple stacks, multiple actions in a stack, then you can easily see which one occurred in which order. Is everyone familiar with that that option to format the output of a date time? Just in case.
No, I've been doing that manually.
tokens, core tokens, date time. It's here somewhere. Somebody sees it, tell me if I'm getting warmer or colder.
It's at the top,
Here it,
right?
here it is right here. Yep, here's an example of it right here.
You had it at the top too. Better than the relative.
Oh, yep, there it is. Yep, that's what I'm looking for right there. Yep. So you do at the end of you do a pipe, and then you can establish your pattern using the the standard values that you the .NET standard formatting values for a date. So I would probably do something like DDMMYY. So that would give me, actually I would do DDMMYY. That's the way I like to text put a date into text like that. So the DD would give me a two-digit numeric date, and MMM would give me a 3-digit abbreviation of the month, and then YY would give me the two-digit year. Yeah, and
So
just put all that together.
Right. Is this example also in the inline help on the configuration page when you're looking at tokens? So I'm thinking that it's not.
I don't think it is, unless we have changed it recently, because I agree that I have thought it probably should be there.
It's probably not, because this is not a plant and app thing. This is a DNN feature.
So actually, let me just go ahead and do a little cleanup here, and I will just save that just like that. I'm going to go, so context to JSON array. I'll leave my display error message. I'm going to get rid of this. Get rid of this one. And we'll save this and do a reload. Choose context. So I got that there. Pretty sure I chose the temp folder, didn't I? Let's see. Yep, there it is. So my context 22 nov 24. So that got me a very file name friendly date that I can see there, and that way I know that I would have I could, if I really wanted to, if I was doing it in a stack and things are happening fast, I probably would want to add some a time with seconds on there as well to make sure I'm getting a unique name. But yeah, there it is. And then if I download that file and open it up, I will drag it over.
Thank you for demonstrating it that way with the save file. I always think in terms of, well, I'll create an entity and put it in there and log it that way. But this would be a really easy way to track when things are going wrong, dump all my variables so that you could go and take a look at, as a developer, what's happened.
Just this week, I used this method to troubleshoot something, and it actually it solved the problem for me. So yeah, it's definitely and credit where credit is due. This context to JSON array was that's Dale's brainchild. He came up with the idea, and the developers implemented it. And well, actually, Dale implemented his own action first, and then the developers used his action that he created, and just
did it better.
Yeah, perfected it some. Yeah. Cool. Oh wow, we are there, aren't we? That. Thank you. We did it. Let's see. We'll go to the very end here. I should have probably gotten there first, but there we go. Thank you everybody for joining us here for the Low Code Campfire, and we appreciate you being here. Good discussion, and join us next time. If anybody's available, please stick around for the Afterglow segment.